A North Dakota man is this week's Department of Defense Medal of Honor winner on their weekly series, Medal of Honor Monday. Quote, during World War I, Navy Captain Willis Winter Bradley Jr. saved his fellow shipmates by making sure an explosion in the ship's gun emplacement didn't cause any further damage or threaten more lives. Bradley received the Medal of Honor for his brave actions and continued to serve for nearly 30 more years. Bradley was born June 28, 1884, in Ransomville, New York, to Sarah and Willis Bradley Sr. He had a brother named Harold who went on to serve in the Army. Shortly after Bradley was born, his family moved to Milner, North Dakota, then to the nearby town of Foreman in 1891. Bradley attended public schools and went to Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota, before venturing into public service as a deputy registrant of deeds for the county where he grew up. Bradley began his Navy career when he was appointed to the Naval Academy, graduating at the top of his class in 1906. About a year later, he married his girlfriend, Sue Worthington. Bradley spent the first several years of his naval service on various ships before taking command of the USS Beidel and the Reserve Torpedo Group at Annapolis, Maryland in 1912. By July 1913, he'd completed an ordnance course at the Naval Postgraduate School and received a Master of Science degree from George Washington University in Washington, D.C. When the U.S. joined World War I, Bradley received orders to serve aboard the USS Pittsburgh II, an armored cruiser. On July 23, 1917, he was on the ship when some saluting cartridge cases that were being reloaded into the ship's aft casemate, its rear gun emplacement, accidentally exploded. Bradley, a lieutenant at the time, was entering that space when he was blown backward by the explosion and briefly knocked unconscious. When he regained some of his senses, he crawled into the casemate to put out the fire, despite the considerable amount of powder surrounding him that could have detonated at any time. His heroic effort prevented further explosions. In the months following the incident, Bradley was temporarily promoted to lieutenant commander, then commander. The promotion became permanent in the spring of 1922. Over the next several years, he served in various positions across the U.S., including as ordnance inspector. Roughly a decade after his onboard heroics on May 1, 1928, Bradley received the Medal of Honor from President Calvin Coolidge during a White House ceremony that his father, wife, and 3 of his 4 daughters were able to attend. One of those daughters, Sue Bradley, later married Navy Rear Admiral Bruce McCandless, a future World War II Medal of Honor recipient. In June of 1929, Bradley was selected to serve as the naval governor of Guam. One of his many accomplishments in that position was recommending that U.S. citizenship be granted by federal legislation to all native residents. Bradley was so well liked that, according to the National Park Service history, Guam residents asked that Secretary of the Navy allow Bradley to represent them in the U.S. after his term of governor ended in May 1931. When Bradley returned to the U.S., he was promoted and served as a stint as a captain of the Pearl Harbor Navy Yard. He continued to serve through World War II, mostly as the commander of Naval Inspection and Survey Board in Long Beach, California, where his family set up a permanent home for his retirement, which was announced in August of 1946. Bradley continued serving his country, this time through the public service. In 1947, he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives from California. He served 1 term before losing his re-election campaign. He next served as assistant to the president of the Pacific Coast Steamship Company from January 1949 until he was elected to the California legislature in 1952. According to Bradley's obituary in the Bismarck, North Dakota Tribune, the retired captain suffered 2 heart attacks in 1953, but continued to work until he suffered a third that he didn't survive on August 27, 1954. Congressional records show he suffered cardiac arrest during a legislative committee meeting in Santa Barbara, California, and died hours later. Bradley is buried at Fort Rosecrans National Cemetery in San Diego. In his honor, the USS Bradley, a destroyer escort, was commissioned in 1965 and served the Navy through 1988. I'm Neil Carlson reporting for iNewZ.TV.